Hey, Steve here. In this video, I'm going to help you understand how to edit for depth and dimensionality in your landscapes using only 3 shades of grey to demonstrate this really important concept. It was only when I took a little time to learn what landscape painters were doing to create their masterpieces that this idea really kind of became clear to me. So if you're already familiar with how to paint landscapes, then I'll be preaching to the choir here. And it's based on the general rule that when capturing a landscape scene, things that are closer to the camera tend to be darker than things that are further away. Now first, a quick reminder that if you want to learn more about using depth to create dynamic landscape scenes in Photoshop, then you can download my free guide at dynamiclandscapeguide.com or click the link in the description or pinned comment. So 3 shades of grey, what the hell am I talking about? Well, I've just set up a simple scene here in Photoshop. I've got a really light grey background and I've sampled 3 shades of grey, dark, medium and light. And what I'm going to do is just sample this middle grey and paint roughly the bottom half of this scene. This is going to be a bit of a leap of imagination, but if you look at this with just the 2 tonalities, the 2 shades of grey that are on screen right now, you can kind of imagine it being a landscape photo or painting or whatever, where you have the ground and the sky. If this was flipped and it was up there like that, there's no way you're thinking, okay, this is the ground and this is the sky. What I'm going to do now is just add another layer here so I can tuck it a little bit behind this ground level. And I'm going to sample this light color here. So if I now draw, say, a mountain, tell me, does this mountain look like it's in the distance or if it's up close? And what if I sample this dark color and draw basically the same shape like this? Even though these 2 triangles are roughly the same shape and size, which one looks further away and which one looks closest? It's the darker one that looks closest and the lighter one that looks further away, right? So let me get rid of this one here. So we go back to this distant mountain. We've got our middle grey ground level here. Now what if I sample this dark color again and we just draw down here that same triangle. Now, because it's darker, again, it looks closer than the one that's further away. It's roughly the same size physically on this screen, but because I've moved it that much closer to the foreground here, and the fact that it's darker, that's having the effect of actually changing its relative size in the wider context of this scene. This looks like a big, distant mountain. This looks like a smaller, kind of almost like a boulder, because it feels closer to us. So let me just set up another quick little scenario here with pretty much the same idea. Starting with, again, this light grey. We'll assume this light grey that's taking up the whole frame is the sky right now. So we'll start drawing with the light colour. I'll add a new layer here. And let's just do some really vague, like mountainy kind of shapes. And fill in down to, say, maybe here. Now we can sample this middle grey and let's have a little bit of overlap, maybe some sort of shape like that. Fill in a little bit more of the foreground this time. And then sample this darker colour here. It's not the greatest shape in the world. Maybe we'll adjust that and come up like this way a bit. Have some more sharp, jagged kind of shapes here. And so even just with this really simple, really crudely drawn image, it actually has a real strong sense of depth. You can imagine this being like one of those photos of the tops of a mountainscape where you're kind of looking across the multiple peaks. This is the foreground here, obviously, whatever we must be standing on to capture this photo. Maybe let's draw a little bit of context in here. Like there's a person looking out across the wider vista, and because of the shading that we've used to simply draw these shapes, the distance and perspective, it all just works. And just to show that it's not just the shapes and how we've drawn them that give that sense of depth, if I invert the colors on this now, here we go. This version where the foreground is now the lightest, the middle ground is still the middle grey, but then the distance is darker. I mean, it just looks like a total mess. It looks absolutely nothing like any kind of realistic black and white, real crude as it is rendition of a mountain scene, because these tonalities make absolutely no sense to our eye. So let me just invert it back to the original. And this, again, just going back to this, makes total sense. So this is all really great, but how can you actually use this information in your photography? Well, when you're editing your landscapes, don't fall into the trap that I used to get caught in, which is to make everything that's dark nice and bright so you can see all the lovely color and detail in every area of the image, using the typical HDR methods. If an element in your scene is dark because it's close and should be dark relative to the rest of the photo, then use that to keep and even enhance the depth and the separation between it and those other elements. Or if an image is appearing flat, maybe the light is flat and you haven't got that contrast in the different tonalities based on distance, then you can play with the apparent depth and separation between elements by darkening to bring something forward in the composition, or lightening to push it into the distance. And so what I've shown you here isn't really a technique, it's just something to keep in the back of your mind while you're working on the tones of your images. Now, this concept is something that we go into in my dynamic landscape editing course, but if you want to get started with my free guide, then you can do that at dynamiclandscapeguide.com, or again, click the link in the description or in the pinned comment. All right, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Catch you next time.